Hi there. So my name is Jason Cresswell. I'm here today from Virtual College. I'm joined with Greg from EEF, and he'll introduce himself in a bit more detail shortly. So just go to cover who Virtual College are. Virtual College are an online learning provider. We specialize in 3 or 4 different things. We have learning management systems, we have online learning content, and we develop bespoke games, e-learning courses, simulations for a variety of our clients. We've been in the industry for around 21 years and surviving really well in a really competitive market. So why we're here today talking with EEF. We've been working with EEF maybe for the last 6 to 12 months on a variety of client projects and projects internally, supporting them turn into more of a digital organisation. But I'll hand over to Greg, who'll give you an introduction to EEF.
Thank you very much. Hi there. Hopefully you can hear all the mic, etc. My name's Greg. I'm the older brother. Is that one better? That one's better. Thanks for laughing at that one, because I've got 2 jokes that come up, all right, and if you can laugh as good as that's great. Okay, so my name's Greg Ward. I'm the Senior Business Solutions Partner for EEF. We are the voice of manufacturing, and we've been operating and supporting manufacturing for the past 120 years. My boss is at the back there. He was there right at the outset, so I'm glad to see he can still stand. Anyway, who we are as an organisation, we deliver a lot of training, a lot of delivery. Some of our centres are there. We cover all sorts of different areas, but the key area we want to focus on here is health and safety. Now, we've been delivering the support since around about the 1970s, and our style of delivery is through expertise, and a lot of it is through the face-to-face delivery. But what's key for us as a not-for-profit organisation is to try and move further forward in terms of our dynamic and how we operate with our manufacturers and our member companies. Okay, so one of the major points was to look at the question of innovation. And we were looking at various different providers and people who could support us. And we looked at Virtual College from a point of view of thinking that we need to look at something more innovative, something with a better drive, something of more interest, and in terms of how we did that and how we moved it further forward. Okay, so one of the major reasons for doing so is that some of our key clients are not just UK-based, but they are international. And when we're looking to try and deliver international solutions, what we're looking at is the reality that sort of face-to-face delivery, well, it's just not possible. Not just a question of language, which of course we can challenge with different trainers, but the sheer expense. And therefore, we looked at the idea of using e-based learning as a solution, but to be honest with you, when we looked at e-based learning, it's kind of been done. So what was really important was to try and get a way in which of doing so, which was different and innovative, etc. And once we'd had a look at Virtual College over a while, we thought that they took something completely different, which Jason's going to go into detail about, but there's a reason of why. Why is this particularly important? Okay, so this particular key client that we're going to look at and refer to, which is Fujitsu, when they brought their requirement to us, we were looking at something which we thought, well, we need to restructure their idea and their approach, etc. Not to just look at direct training, which has its place, but we want to understand about something that's really practical and emotional. And I'll try and use this with an experiment. So here goes. Okay, right. I'd like a show of hands, okay, from everybody who went to school. Right, you've got to get into this, right, because I'm standing up here feeling like, you know what I mean, I came from Newcastle this morning and my first train was cancelled. So not only am I slightly nervous, but you know what I mean, I've had a morning of it. So hands up if you went to school, all right? Really encouraged, right, good. 1, 2, 10, excellent, right. So from that, I'd like everybody to show of hands if you did French, Spanish, German, Latin, Greek, you know, the modern languages, you know, if you did that. Yes, you did that? You did that as well, Andrew? No? So, the point is that you've been to school, you've done languages, I'm sure that you had that lesson time after time after time. But if I'm going to ask you the next question, which is, how many of you can just speak fluently in French, German, Spanish? Show of hands. I'm going to ask why, and if you say it's because I'm Spanish, then that would be fine. But the point is that you can do so because it's practical, because you do it. Now, show of hands, everybody who drives a car. Excellent. You're really in this. I feel like I'm really connected to you. Right, so if you drive a car, I'd like you to show of hands again if you think that you're a better driver now than you were when you passed your test. There's a guy over here not sure, I don't know what you didn't think, just show, right, okay, so what I'm going to suggest is that you're a better driver now because you're actually driving all of the time and you get better at it. However, if we then said, do you think that you could take your theory test now and pass it as well as you could at the time? Show of hands. Good, this has worked really well. Right, so what we're showing is that the point is that in terms of somewhat academic learning, there's a real place for it. But the reality in terms of how we're going to learn something is through, in effect, a practical way of learning. And that was the key thing. When we worked with Fujitsu, their question was, if we're going to support and deliver a solution in 20-odd different countries, how do we do that where we make it emotional, we make it practical, and we make it work with us, and to see how that will run through. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip a slide in order just to get to this point, to say that much as we're using Fujitsu as the example, EEF work alongside with Virtual College in terms of a partnership in order that we begin to deconstruct some solutions. We need to look right at the top level, right at a strategic level of understanding about what their outcomes need to look like, and then we move forward from that particular position in terms of actually saying, right, how can you learn something, how can you actively do things in order that you can move further forward and move things to a point at which where you can achieve your objective. Okay, right. At that stage, you've been a lovely audience. I'm going to pass over back to Jason, and he can give you some more detail. Thank you.
So these are some of the different ingredients that we used in developing and kind of creating the architecture for our learning solution with Fujitsu alongside EEF. We won't come on to all of them today, but the ones we're going to look at mainly are games and the behavior-based game that we created to engage people and encapsulate health and safety in a single product. And we'll also look on videos, on our animations, and touch on a little bit of storytelling. So what did the solution look like for Fujitsu? Well, it's a little bit complex, but just to run through it at a quick high level, we created a tiered solution that was based on the business needs, and that was looking at what safe work, what we wanted all workers to achieve, what we wanted those higher risk managers to achieve, what we needed the more senior managers in the organization to understand, and this is all color-coded for different learning styles. And what we wanted to encapsulate throughout it all is one consistent thread, and that thread was to put the learner at the heart. It was to increase engagement and ensure that there was a story throughout, so people feel like they're connected to the learning material. One of the things that we did was develop a story. We used aspirational success stories. It was clear when we met Fujitsu, they're a very proud organization and they want to pass success throughout their organization. And that's one of the elements that we use, and we'll come on to look at that one of those success stories in just a moment. We wanted situations which were genuine and recognizable. The issue with 30,000 employees across the region was people needed to connect to it. And if people couldn't relate, people couldn't understand what it meant for them in their environment, that was a key barrier for us. And it was an ideal behavior change format. So what we did, we looked at the story arc. This is a classic story arc. Every story follows pretty much the same arc. And at the start, there's always a build-up, there's a bit of a plateau, but we want to increase engagement. So all of a sudden, at the start, we're learning about a situation. The middle part is where kind of an issue occurs, and then at the end, this is where there's a resolution, and people are happy and can go back to their day-to-day work. So let's just take a look at what that means in practice. So the first, I'm going to show you 3 chapters to a basic story that we made for Fujitsu. Hopefully it's relevant to quite a few different organizations here.
The location for this story is Helsinki, Finland. But wherever in the world you work for Fujitsu, the messages still apply. As the story plays, think about whether there was anything you would have done differently at that point. Our Managed Infrastructure Services teams have expert capability and capacity to deliver all services locally, anywhere around the world. And this can include maintenance on cash machines. Recently, a member of the ATM maintenance team was on a scheduled visit towards the end of his shift. Something as simple as a dropped screwdriver would potentially change working practice within Fujitsu across the region.
So we use the story to break up parts of the learning. So that would be played early on in a particular unit or module or understanding. And if we just move on to the second module here.
You'll remember that our maintenance engineer had dropped his screwdriver and was feeling around for it. Imagine his surprise when, out of the darkness, he picked up not a screwdriver, but a mouse. Luckily, this alerted him to a more serious hazard, some damaged electrical wires, possibly caused by this furry intruder. Following the incident, where an electric shock was only narrowly avoided, the ATM engineer immediately reported this to his line manager. As a result, the process for ATM engineers to follow was reviewed, amended, and all engineers were issued with revised working instructions. The reissued procedures included 5 key points. 1. A hazard assessment must be undertaken. 2. Wires must be checked carefully for damage before touching them. 3. In dark spaces, extra lighting should be used, such as a flashlight or headlamp. 4. Use a voltage detector pen to determine the presence of electric voltage in a piece of equipment. 5. Regularly review the procedures. What effect do you think these changes have had? Find out in Chapter 3.
So one of the points of these stories are to take people from a negative situation with a bad impact all the way to a positive outcome, and to allow people to relate to this. This isn't just about ATM engineers. This isn't about a particular scenario. It's more around the, and this is what we did to change, and we want to challenge the learners' thinking throughout. I won't show you the 3rd chapter, but we'll be on the stand over there on E6, so we'll be able to show the 3rd chapter if anyone wants to see that. But just to reflect back on the story arc, you can see how it definitely relates. We've got the growth, the situation and understanding, an issue that's occurred, and then a resolution and creating that positive impact. The next thing we're going to touch on is games. So in order to engage our learners and remove employee fatigue, one of the key issues across Fujitsu is that because they have 30,000 employees, all of their different countries operate different L&D strategies, but this was the first strategy that we were putting across the EMEIA region. So it's really ensuring that we have a high impact and a positive effect on this first solution. So we wanted to create a serious game. It's a really fine balance between a playful game and a serious game, and some of the things that we need to consider are on here. So educational content, fun and storytelling, different game techniques, and a serious purpose. And it was a really fine balance. If we had too much educational content, it'd be boring. If it was too fun, the business wouldn't want it. It wouldn't help pull all of that learning together. If it didn't have a serious purpose, well, what are we doing here? So it's a really fine balance, and I guess Seesaw is the best way of epitomizing that. So we've just got a quote up here, but what does it actually mean? It means if we're putting people in situations that they understand, and we keep putting them in those situations, we can then allow them to react in the right way when it's in the real world. So we're allowing people to make mistakes, to do errors, but in a safe environment and understand what that impact is. So some of the game mechanics that we used, and I'll show you a quick trailer for the video in just a moment. Challenges between the users, so the users are now competing. We also created a leaderboard that was based on business regions and business districts. So if we had the services division versus the manufacturing division, they would be competing against each other. So now all of a sudden we're not just having frontline workers compete against themselves, we're having regional competitions and business line competitions and a progress bar. So let's just have a look at this brief video.
The health and safety game shows a working day condensed into 10 minutes. As incidents appear, learners must prioritize risk events based on likelihood and severity levels. Good choices, rapid responses, and those reflective of company values lead to higher scores. If the learner performs well in the game, their score is added to their team score. If they want a higher score, they can revisit the associated e-learning and play again. Game-based learning can be applied to any learning scenarios. Here's what a city could look like, or a warehouse, or inside an office, or a large retail space. Wherever there's a need for learners to move beyond theoretical learning into behavioral change, a game is a great solution.
So let's just recap some of that game architecture. What were the particular hazards? We wanted people to look at hazards, identify them, categorize them based on, and prioritize them based on the risk and the impacts to the organization, and give them a score. We wanted them to understand the reporting process and put them in a safe environment. So as a learner plays, they're constantly getting feedback to how they're performing. The assessment criteria is how long it takes an individual to react to an alert once it's popped up, the time it takes the player to make a decision, and the actual decision an individual makes. In terms of business data, the business was really critical that we could pull insight and information out of the back end and future-proof it as we move forward based on the risk that organization faces. So we have an MI dashboard where we can see what the key trends are. I'll hand you back over to Greg to do a bit of a summary.
Okay, well, my point really is this in terms of the fact that EEF are, we're the customer for Virtual College. These are our piece of work in terms of what we do with Fujitsu. But it's important to be clear the fact that what we did was to look and work with Virtual College to understand about how we could do something differently. The fact that we've delivered training solutions for 50 plus years is the reality that we're very proud in what we've done and what we get across to our clients. However, we needed something better, and the innovation that Virtual College were able to bring, I think, was extremely powerful. It's really important, particularly if I just draw back to the point that health and safety, it isn't that much fun. You know what I mean? When you're looking to do training with that, people don't automatically think, well, I'll tell you what, safety, that's the thing I want to really spend my day with, But actually, once you actually look to combine the fact that you get the key objectives in terms of understanding about how you want to change an organization, impact its culture, we need to understand the fact that actually we need a blend of how we actually get that message across and that learning. And Virtual College did that particularly well. So, my interest and my question really, for those who are bold enough to stick their hand up, is to say, what does that actually reflect in terms of your own approach, in terms of training for your organization? How do you approach it? Would you look in terms of thinking, well, actually it tends to be a face-to-face approach, etc., or do you think it replicates this type of approach? I'm curious, I'm interested for anybody who wishes to put forward their own thought of how they do that. I'm looking for the volunteer, of which I'm finding it very difficult to find. So, I'm going to leave the question with you, okay? This is really innovative stuff. It's really, really good work that's done through Virtual College in order to work alongside with ourselves. I think you're based just over there, over in the corner. If you want to come across and have a conversation with either myself or with Jason, then please do so. But really appreciate your time.